topic tonight, domestic violence. And you might well ask, why are we talking about that? It doesn't seem to be that big a deal. But actually, the studies show that domestic violence is rampant in this country. The Center for Disease Control says that a woman is battered in this country every 20 seconds. It also says that 1 out of every 3 women is either hit or sexually assaulted by her partner, by her spouse, at some point in her life. And that's astounding, 1 out of 3. And that would indicate that there are some people here, maybe, some people watching us online, who are victims. And we hope that you're free from that abuse and that your wounds are healed. Now, not everybody knows that they're abused. They're in a relationship and they're confused. They don't know what's going on. But we know that during this pandemic, domestic violence has spiked. It's increased. The Illinois Domestic Violence Hotline reported that last year, 2020, there was an increase in calls for help by 16%. And if you count texts, messages by texting, it was like 3,000% increase because more people were using that method to look for help. And we also know that from the police that in that year there was an increase of homicides related to domestic violence right here in this state, 121% increase. So domestic violence is rampant and is common in our communities. And we should say, well, what's going on? Why is this happening? Well, I think we all know what's been going on during COVID. There's been a lot of isolation. People are confined to their homes. So if you were in a tension-related relationship, marriage, of course that situation was aggravated. Perhaps the family finances were in decline, that increased the tensions. So there were a lot of reasons why there was more domestic violence. But it's interesting that there was less service to these victims because many of the agencies that provide counseling were not doing it in person. They couldn't. They were doing it online or by phone, and many victims felt that was inadequate. So they didn't get help. So actually there was a decline in the amount of service. And if you look at shelters, just think of a shelter and COVID comes, and now they have to social distance. So you have a shelter with 30 people. No, you can't have 30 anymore. Maybe you can have 15 or 20. So the number of beds available declined during COVID, and still are declining. In fact, the Illinois Domestic Violence Hotline reported that in 2020 there were 109 days, which is almost 1/3 of the days of the year, where there were no beds available for victims of domestic violence. 109 days. So if you had to escape and look for a shelter, you were out of luck. There was no place to go. That's tragic. But that's what COVID has brought to us. Now, how are we going to respond to this? Not just individually, but as a church, as parishes. How do we respond? We have to be following what Jesus tells us in that gospel. We have to be serving these kinds of people who may not be visible, who may be a little forgotten, but we know they're there. The numbers tell us. And so we have to reach out to them. I always say, can you imagine Jesus walking down the street one day and he comes across a woman with a black eye, her arm is in a sling, and he says, "What happened to you?" And she says, "Oh, my husband beat me." What do you think Jesus would say to her? What do you say? You got to go back to him and work it out? Or would he say, come with me and I will make you safe? That's what he would say, right? And that's what we have to say as the Church of Jesus Christ. Come to us and we will help you be safe. That's what we want to do. So we have people who are living this abuse, and domestic violence is easily defined. It's a pattern of behavior that seeks power and control over another person. And that power and control can be physical, it can be verbal or emotional, it can be sexual, it can be economic. We all know what physical abuse is, but emotional abuse is the most common form, and it's the most difficult to detect. There are no bruises, no broken bones. But many victims say it actually hurts more because it attacks the human spirit. And it's the most common form. All the insults, the constant criticism, the belittling, the foul words, maybe even the silent treatment. And many victims don't know what's happening to them. Sexual abuse is perhaps more common these days than in previous years, largely because of the easy access to pornography on the internet. So some men will watch it and then expect their wives to watch it and imitate it. Or maybe it's other forms. For example, infidelity. Some people don't think anything of it. Economic abuse is more common than we might think. I mean, I've heard some stories now where the stimulus check arrived to the house. No, the victim doesn't have any access to it. The perpetrator takes it for himself. So there's many ways in which someone is exercising power and control over another person. When I was pastor at St. Pius, I started, and I didn't have much experience of domestic violence, never in my life. And I didn't really see it until I hired a pastoral counselor. And one day she said to me, Father, almost all my clients are women, and most of them are victims of domestic violence. And I had no idea, and I knew many of those women. But I didn't see the problem. She opened my eyes so that I could see it. And I asked her to teach me how to recognize it and how to respond to it. And the more I talked about it, the more people came to us. So we had to look for funding to expand our team. And we ended up hiring one counselor after another. And we ended up with 7 full-time counselors on our parish staff, the largest domestic violence parish-based program in the United States, I think. And we were drawing people from all over, not just from our parish. It was a great experience. And that group of counselors still exists. It's called Hope Family Services at the Resurrection Project, and it still is there in Pilsen. So I learned a lot from that. And today we have 2 women who are being helped by that program, and I'd like them to come up. Maria and Marcelo. They're going to speak in Spanish, and I will translate for you all. So these are 2 women who have experienced this abuse, and they are in a support group with us in this program. And I have to let you use my microphone. So, Marcela Mendoza.
Okay. Yo sufrí por 13 años violencia doméstica.
I suffered domestic violence for 13 years.
Las adicciones de mi esposo, sus infidelidades.
So the seductions of my husband and his infidelity.
Emocionalmente nos dañaron mucho a mis hijos y a mí.
So his abuse, emotional abuse, damaged me and my children.
El mirar que no había dinero más que para pagar renta y biles, pero sí había dinero para las adicciones mujeres, el alcohol, drogas.
So economically, I saw that there was no money for us, the children and ourselves, but he had money for his addictions and for his infidelity.
Gracias a Job, familias, estamos recibiendo ayuda en terapias para los niños, para mí, psicológicamente, para estar mejor. Gracias.
So thanks to the whole family services, I'm receiving therapy or counseling, and so are my children, and we are getting stronger as we move forward. I'm very appreciative.
Gracias.
Aquí está María.
Mi nombre es María. Viví violencia doméstica, física, verbal, emocional, drogas, armas.
So I suffered domestic violence 5 years, all kinds of physical and emotional abuse, financial abuse, with his drugs and his weapons.
Era hasta golpes. Gracias al programa de Dahm en familias que nos ayudan a todas las mujeres.
Thanks very much to the Whole Family Services Program, which has assisted us, myself and my children.
En todas las mujeres que padecen de este tipo de violencia doméstica, tenemos que hablar, pedir ayuda y no esperar a que cause la muerte.
So I want to urge all women who are experiencing any kinds of problem to look for help because it exists so that they can deal with what they're suffering.
Tenemos que apoyarnos y hacer crecer más todo esto para la ayuda.
So we have to support one another and so that we continue to grow.
Y que no estamos solas, que no debemos de aguantar violencia doméstica, verbal, física.
So we're not alone, we just have to work together to get over this abuse.
Pidan ayuda, que sí se puede sobresalir y no aguantemos, queden callados, que sí se puede.
Okay, so we can do it and we have to look for help and take advantage of it.
Para que los jóvenes de hoy, que no se queden callados, que tienen que hablar con otras personas y pedir ayuda. Y gracias a Dios y a toda la comunidad que no se queden callados, piden ayuda.
So we have to not be silent, we have to encourage our young people also to look for help when they need it.
Gracias.
Gracias a ustedes. Un aplauso para ellos. Well, I thought it was important for us to hear some testimony of people who have experienced this abuse and are struggling to get over the trauma, or at least deal with the trauma. So I'm very appreciative for them coming and speaking here to us tonight. So why do so many people fall into this trap of domestic violence? I mean, why is it so common? And the answer is, of course, they don't see it coming. Maybe they experienced it as children in the family they were growing up. They saw their mother abused and they think that it's normal. Or maybe they see a problem and they think they can fix it, but they can't. And so they stay trying all the time. So there are many reasons why victims stay. But to prevent domestic violence, we definitely have to reach out to our youth. We have to help them see the signs of abuse. And I'm happy to tell you that we here at the Archdiocese are piloting a curriculum about healthy and unhealthy relationships in 4 Catholic schools. It's a curriculum called Dating Matters, developed over 8 years by the Centers for Disease Control, which has proven itself effective to change the behaviors of teenagers so that they don't fall into abusive relationships. In the last several weeks, I have had conversations with 2 teenagers, both of whom fell into abusive relationships when they were 15 years old. Fortunately, they were able to get out. One of them after attempting suicide. So it's serious when we think of 1 out of every 5 girls between the age of 11 and 17 has been hit on a date. 1 out of 5. So that makes us concerned for our daughters, our granddaughters, our nieces. They're at risk. So we have to prepare them so that they don't fall into the trap. I want to conclude. The challenge here is for all of us. But the good news is that we have a wonderful statement by the United States Catholic Bishops. They wrote a pastoral letter which is called When I Call for Help. And you can find that online. Just put in When I Call for Help. It comes right up. In the first paragraph, the bishops say, we have to state as strongly and clearly as we can that violence against women, inside or outside the home, is never justified. And it is a sin and often a crime. And then they conclude the letter by saying, we emphasize that no one is expected to stay in an abusive marriage. Those are words of liberation for many women and some men. No one is expected to stay in an abusive marriage. That's the position of the Catholic Church, and many people don't know it. So we have to get the word out in all of our communities. No one has to stay in this kind of relationship. So we are working here in the Archdiocese to do this in many parishes, and very appreciative of the support of Cardinal Superintendent here at the Holy Name Cathedral as we go forth, trying to make our church known for not tolerating domestic violence and welcoming all victims and helping them free themselves from that abuse. We want to be servants of others, particularly those who are suffering abuse in their own homes. So my dear friends, tonight, let us recommit ourselves to working for this, raising awareness, preventing it with our young people, and getting people help that need the help. We want everybody to live in peace and love. Thank you very much.